Today I'm here with John Bird, and I'm going to ask you, John, to introduce yourself, your firm, and your practice area.
I'm John T. Bird. I practice law with Glassman Bird Powell here in Hays, Kansas. My practice area is pretty much about whatever comes in the door. I do concentrate on high asset divorce cases, and I handle matters that might end up in the courtroom litigation.
So, why did you go into the law, John?
Probably mostly because of my family. My father was a businessman, small businessman, farmer, who I watched struggle with a lot of institutions such as banks. And I remember being with him when he would have to deal with the bankers. And I thought, they have too much power and we don't have enough. And so as I proceeded in school, and I was lucky enough to be admitted to Washburn University, I watched other people who were in law school ahead of me. And so I decided that if I wanted to try to right some of the wrongs that I had seen inflicted on my dad, that might be a way to go. And so I went to law school.
Nice. So what do you love about the law, or what inspires you about the law?
I like it because it does level the playing field. The legal system, when it's used properly, is amazingly effective. It also allows people without power to have enough to be treated fairly. And it also eliminates some of the grind of society. Lawyers are why people don't have to go out in the street and shoot it out. We are able to help resolve conflicts in a civil way in a courtroom. I like it especially that in the courtroom, only one person gets to talk at a time. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, your voice is no louder than the weakest other person in the courtroom.
Yeah, I love that. So, how long have you been practicing, John?
Good question. I was first licensed and began practicing in 1974. So I don't think about that real often, but that's 49 years?
Okay. Yeah. So in 49 years, what's your best funny story about a lawyer, or practicing law, or being a lawyer?
Well, after 49 years, you have a lot of those, of course. I took a case for a young fella who was accused of harboring a dangerous animal. It was a buffalo. And the county attorney's office decided that they wouldn't negotiate. They wanted him to plead guilty to this crime of harboring a dangerous animal. And what he had was a buffalo in a pen at his farm. One of the neighbors who didn't have a farm decided they didn't like the fact that buffalo was just across the fence from him. The buffalo never got out. There was never any attack on anybody or anything like that. And so it was a misdemeanor case, unclassified misdemeanor. And I told him I would handle it, and my fee was 1/3 of the buffalo when it was taken to slaughter. And so in the courtroom, the county attorney and the sheriff's office were working hard to prove how dangerous buffaloes were and so forth and so on. And I had prepared ahead of time by making a list of all of the statutes in Kansas that used the word buffalo. And of course, I saw that the state animal was a buffalo. And I noticed that the state song talked about the buffalo. Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam. And so I sang that in the courtroom. And when I got done, the judge looked at the county attorney, the assistant county attorney, and me and said, if you think I'm going to find that the state animal is a dangerous animal, you're wrong. This case is dismissed. And the assistant county attorney was just crushed that her case had been thrown out of court. The sheriff's officer was befuddled because he just thought it was a slam dunk, and my client was just as happy as could be because he got to keep King the buffalo. Eventually, he actually paid me with sheep instead of a buffalo. So
there's two things I love about that story. So one is it showcases really how incredibly creative lawyers can be in making their arguments and winning with just doing things a little bit outside the box. You know, I think that's great. And the other thing is that sometimes it's the small cases that really give you good memories or good satisfaction. So it's not, every client doesn't need to walk in the door with a huge retainer. It's what you can do for the person that
Right.
really is what lawyers love.
Yep.
So I love
Yeah,
that.
and Julie, that was a good example of what the law does too. The state of Kansas is a $12 billion a year entity, and theoretically, any criminal case, the state of Kansas could spend all of that money to prosecute somebody. And in that case, obviously that's an exaggeration. No one would ever have that happen. But the point is that they've got all the money in the world. There were at that time 5 assistant county attorneys. They have in Ellis County probably 100 law enforcement officers. I have no investigator on staff. I had myself, me and I was able to show the client that all the cards that were stacked against him didn't matter when we walked into the justice system.
So what's a fun fact about John Bird or something people wouldn't know about you?
Well, I'm not sure how fun it is, but I'm a Marine Corps veteran. They also probably don't know that one of my vocations has been to restore old buildings. I restored 7 historic buildings here in Ellis County. And right now I'm doing this interview from one of them. It's a Lutheran church built in 1902 that we repurposed into a law office, and it's really beautiful. It's got all the original stained glass. We kept all the stone is the same stone that they laid 121 years ago. And I've done that with houses. I live in a barn. It's a stone dairy barn that we converted into a home at the farm that I live on, which has been in our family for more than 100 years. Some people don't know how much I love fixing up old buildings.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I knew about your office and I knew about maybe one other one, but I didn't know that. So that's really interesting.
Well, the what used to be called the T Rose Inn used to belong to me, and we did refurbish that, and it's since been redone by other people. I've got a house that was once owned by Congressman or Congresswoman Catherine O'Loughlin, who was the first female congressperson from Kansas, and she was from here in Hayes. She owned a home here in Hayes, and many, many years later, they were going to tear that down, and I bought it for $500, and we moved it out to our family farm, and we've completely restored that. We have the stone barn. My wife Carolyn and I purchased the house at 17th and Main here in Hayes. It was called the Madden House, and we bought that back in 2007 and completely renovated it, and it's still there, and really it's kind of a real landmark in Hayes now. A lot of people like to look at it and tour it and that kind of thing. I sold it to some other people, and they've done a great job of keeping it up. And then of course this building.
I think my husband actually went to kindergarten in your building.
Yeah, my kids did the same. And it's funny because when I do an interview with a client, there are a lot of questions I ask, and in the divorce cases, one of the questions is, where were you married? And every once in a while I'll have somebody say, well, here in this building. and now I'm going to get a divorce. And so it's kind of a fun little thing. Probably not as fun for them as it is for me, but a lot of people have been through different times in their life. This building, it was also a Catholic church. So it was Lutheran, and the Catholics bought it in 1965, and then my law partners and I bought it in the 90s. And so there have been lots and lots of different types of people who've been here, including students.
Well, John, I wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this, because you're one of the more seasoned attorneys in our area, and you didn't have to do this, and you were one of the first people to jump on it, and I really appreciate that. I think it's great for people in the community to get to know who we are as lawyers, and so I think by doing this, you set a great example, and I appreciate that very much.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. As you can tell, I love the law, and I think this hopefully will help people understand that we're people, and that we're part of their community, and that they shouldn't be hesitant at all to ask for our opinions and advice.
Well, thanks, John.
You bet. Thank you, Julie.